If you need help deciding whether Songs of Silence is the right turn-based fantasy strategy game for you, this video will answer all of your questions. We'll start with a 60-second, too long didn't read overview of the game, then we'll see what it's like to actually play it by examining the gameplay loop and mechanics before looking at some practical considerations and the different types of players this game might appeal to help you decide whether this game is worth your time and money today. Songs of Silence is a gorgeous-looking and sounding turn-based strategy game set in an intriguing fantasy universe where a war of the gods created two worlds, one of light and one of dark, where two races make up three factions with differing play styles, resulting in a relatively steep learning curve, but ultimately light mechanics for the 4X genre. The art style and story create decent levels of immersion, but the campaign is over just a bit too soon. Whether it's the campaign, skirmish, co-op, or online multiplayer, you'll play as one of three factions, moving your heroes and their armies around the map, sieging and conquering enemy cities while investing resources in your own cities and expanding your armies in a very Total War style overworld map experience. Battles are automated, placing greater emphasis on army composition and setup prior to the engagements, but you'll spam power cards during the battle that can inflict damage, heal, or call reinforcements to sway the result. So if you like the sound of gorgeous visuals, turn-based play, an easygoing 4X experience, and the charge of the Rohirrim, but with cows, Songs of Silence might be your cup of tea. If that hasn't put you off, then grab a drink and get comfortable as we run through the detail of what you actually do in Songs of Silence, starting with the gameplay loop and mechanics before delving into more practical considerations to help you decide whether it's right for you. Although the three factions result in different playstyles, the general gameplay loop for each is the same. You start the game with a city, a hero, and a small army. You manage your kingdom by playing cards to spend resources, which construct buildings and generally upgrade your cities to increase income, along with your city's defenses and further increasing your choice of cards to provide further army recruitment options. Bear in mind that although the game includes cards, this isn't a deck-building game at all. The cards could easily be substituted for a button without any impact on the gameplay. There are three different resources in the game. All three factions use gold and building material. Then each faction has their own unique third resource, which is generated in different ways, which is what leads to each unique playstyle. The Crusader faction, for example, have a giant black hole-like sphere that acts as their capital city. As you conquer cities, you move your sphere to consume other cities, which is how they create their third resource, Void Essence, basically forcing you to be aggressive and expand while leaving a trail of destruction behind you. Whereas the other two factions have more traditional ways of creating their third resource, which are less aggressive. As each game progresses, you will likely control several cities of varying sizes. You can recruit units at any city, though if no army is present, that unit can only be added to the city's garrison to defend it. Until an army comes to that city, then you can transfer the unit into that army. If an army is present at that city, you also have the option of recruiting directly into that army in a very limited number of slots, or into that army's reserves. When a city is attacked, you can utilize the army that's stationed there, plus the city's garrison. If your army is attacking a city, or is attacked out in the open, the army won't have a garrison, as they stay in the cities, and it also won't fight with its reserves. So choosing which units are in reserve and which are in the army is an important decision. Where you place them is also where they will start the next auto battle, so exact placement is also a slight consideration. You can only have one hero per army and one army per city at any one time. Each faction has a handful of heroes that you can choose from, with different strengths that tend to favor a certain type of unit, such as cavalry, for example. You start with one hero, but over time might end up with several, each leading an army. Your armies and heroes gain experience as they fight, leveling up through 10 levels, each time choosing a new card that could be used in a battle, or while on the overworld map, as well as expanding the number of units that army can contain. The units themselves vary massively, from weak but upgradable thralls to huge lumbering beasts that hurl lightning across the battlefield. The overall low number of units each army can contain results in a heck of a lot of shuffling of units within armies and transporting fresh units from your cities to your armies in the field by transferring from one army to another. Each army has a limited number of movement points. These movement points can be spent very flexibly and are totally consumed by certain actions, such as fighting. If an army travels more than 50% of its total travel capacity, you'll see the army change into marching formation, which basically means the army can be ambushed, essentially putting them at a disadvantage in the ambush battle. Battles are automated in this game. The units you selected to be in your army, and not in the army reserves, will start the battle where you placed them in the army grid, then will charge forward and do their thing. You'll soon be playing battle cards that deal damage in various ways, may heal your troops, may force a certain type of unit into a certain spot, like a charging of cavalry mechanic. You might also play a card to bring in your most powerful unit from your reserves. The cards recharge quickly and you can speed up the battle, so ultimately you will be spamming cards left, right and center, which feels a little cheap at times but is far from boring. If you want to retreat to save your army, you have to wait for the retreat card to fully charge, which can lead to some tense moments. If your army is totally wiped out, you'll have to wait a few turns before bringing that hero back to fight for you again. Once the units in your army take damage, they will take time to heal, usually requiring a city to heal over several turns. However, juggling the units from your reserves, or even using multiple armies to take turns attacking a city and cycling their respective reserves, each army can last out in the field a while before needing to retreat, especially if you use a particular hero to ferry fresh troops to your armies out in the field. Just don't forget to leave or recruit garrisons into your key cities as the game is over as soon as you lose your capital. And more than once, I unexpectedly lost a game by leaving my capital relatively undefended, like an idiot. The campaign is relatively short, with 8 stages, some of which are optional, although each stage can take quite a while to complete, if you are happy to take your time and, of course, depending on the level of difficulty you've selected. Once you've completed the campaign, or skipped it entirely, there are several options for a skirmish against the AI, with customizable maps and up to 6 players, including yourself, along with a selection of fates, which are essentially rules that mix up the gameplay, such as imposing a time limit per turn to make things more interesting. It's possible to play against others online, and you can also play in teams, so Songs of Silence is perfectly co-op and skirmish friendly for those that aren't interested in a campaign and want to play the game with or against friends. So far, this review has been a mixture of positive and factual, or at least I hope it has. So what about the negatives? The big one is that the campaign feels short, especially if you're used to this genre. There are a few other nitpicks, such as the AI being a bit dumb, as it can be repetitive and do silly things like siege your city with one injured hero. Units themselves don't gain experience, making them feel a bit cheap. And I experienced some frame rate drops in the larger scale battles. Most of these things are minor annoyances though, and across the board the game is rather solid. But the main negative I would level at this game, at least for now, is the lack of depth across the board. They've got a good thing going here, but more story, more playable factions and units, etc., are required before this game can really shine. Hopefully by now you have an idea of what it's like to actually play the game, so let's address some other more practical considerations that might affect your purchasing decision. The game may not be a particularly deep 4X experience, but it still has a steep learning curve at the beginning. The tutorial is built into the beginning of the campaign, and there are plenty of tooltips and an encyclopedia to read if you have the patience. Once you add in the fact the 3 races use fundamentally different mechanics, you should expect your first couple of game sessions to confuse you before you start picking it up. 4X strategy games normally require many hours of your time and are simply not an option for many. However, the whole concept behind Songs of Silence is to break that mold with streamlined mechanics and quick turns. This is a 4X game suitable for those with little time to gain, though of course you can spend many hours playing it, which I have. 4X games are also often a solitary experience. However, with the skirmish options both online and offline, Songs of Silence breaks the mold again, making it a great choice to enjoy with friends looking for both shorter and longer games. The price of the game has varied over time, and there have been 25% discounts off the base price. If you like the look of the game, then the full price is really not that steep for the amount of content you would be buying. However, you may as well wait for a sale, as chances are you could pick up the game with a 25% discount within a handful of weeks. There is also a supporter bundle, including the soundtrack and a few digital goodies if you want to support the developer. Having played many hours on PC with an Xbox controller and also on Steam Deck, I can confirm the game works very well on controller and on Steam Deck. In fact, I preferred it to mouse and keyboard. I've tried to keep things factual until now, but here is my personal opinion of this game, summed up in 30 seconds to provide some context. The visuals and production value are solid, the mechanics are light and fun, the factions varied, and there are basically no annoying bugs. Yes, the game could use more content, and at times the campaign objectives were tedious. But overall, I found this game surprisingly addictive, the skirmish mode in particular. Once you pick up the mechanics for each faction, it definitely has the just one more turn feel that is essential to the longevity of these games. It's a surprisingly big thumbs up from me as someone who has only a passing interest in turn-based 4X games, who normally prefers the more complex ones. But what about you guys? Hopefully by now you have an idea of what it's like to actually play a game of Songs of Silence. So with all that said, who is this game right for? As always, it depends what you're into. If your preference is a 4X game with deep mechanics, you will soon get bored with Songs of Silence, as that's not what it's designed to be. Probably best you skip this game, unless you like the sound of a light 4X. If you like the idea of deep 4X games but don't have the time for them, Songs of Silence was basically made for you. The skirmish mode is great for playing with friends or against the AI, and it can be easily picked up and put down again. If you like a good story, then Songs of Silence is a mixed bag. It looks great, and the setting is intriguing. It's just a shame it doesn't last as long as you would like, so it depends whether you would also play the skirmish mode, which would help with longevity. If you're a total noob to 4X games, then again, Songs of Silence is a good choice. Don't get me wrong, there is a learning curve, but it's nothing compared to Paradox games, where you feel like you're studying for a PhD just to get your army to move somewhere. But if you're really not sure, there is a free demo you can try. If you have any further questions, please feel free to ask, or if you already own the game and have some additional information you'd like to add, please let us all know in the comments below. If you found the video useful, please leave a like for the algorithm gods, and if you enjoy this style of review, consider subscribing for more content, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.